So as we start out, I just thought I would ask, we're going to ask actually each speaker today, if you could just say where your special aina is, whether that's your onehana, where you live now, or just a place that's been really special to you throughout your life.
I guess I would say I'm like a child of the ko'olaus. I kind of grew up all over the
Mm,
place, but it was always beneath the ko'olaus. Yeah, from my mom's parents were in Manoa, and then my father's parents were in Maunawili, and then I kind of grew up from Manoa to Kahaluu. Yeah.
that's a beautiful just visual. And since you brought up your family, we're also going to ask, if you had one person that you wanted to call into the room, could be a kupuna, could be someone that, is living or has passed, but who would you like to call into the room today?
Um, there'd be plenty, but I guess yeah, I'm thinking about my father's mother. Yeah, my nana. Yeah,
Hmm.
I see her a lot in my dreams, so figure she's
What,
around.
yeah, were you raised by her? What kind of role did she play in your life?
Yeah, no, we were definitely raised with her, but I guess she always encouraged my artistic side and always enjoyed having conversations. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I think that's a really beautiful transition since she encouraged that artistic spark in you. Like, where did where did your art kind of change from just maybe something that was like a talent or something that you liked into this idea that you wanted to do this like as a career or something in your life that you wanted to like be an artist?
I guess I'm grateful for my family. They were real supportive from the time I was a kid. They're putting me in programs or
Mm.
encouraging me to enter like contests and stuff like that. So that was one of the things I was doing, I guess, since I was a little kid. But yeah, I was probably at Kamehameha schools and meeting Carl Paul, Mr. Paul, where I kind of like got the spark that yeah, I can do this in life.
Oh yeah, Carl's a great artist. That's awesome that he was one of your mentors. Um, and I think when I think of you, I think where I met you first was part of group
Hmm.
murals, like with Meliana Meyer. So how did, since we're here today thinking about not just independence, but interdependence and community, you just mentioned Carl as like a
Hmm.
mentor. Um, what role did like being a part of like group activities, group art, large murals where you were assigned a particular task and you had to collaborate with other artists? What role did that play?
Yeah, for me that piece in the convention center, it's still I kind of hold it as the greatest Hawaiian mural, and that's what I always strive for, and I'll never reach it because the beauty of that one is yeah, like you're saying, the collective, all the so there were the five master artists, Meliana Meyer, Ao Lagunero, Kahi Ching, Harinani Orm, and Solomon Enos.
Yes.
And then there's a whole bunch of kids. I forgot from which charter school. That was Shumeliana, and then there was a few of us kind of in that. They called us the Alaka'i, kind of the young artists. But um, to me, it's like the difference. There can be like a great singer or something, but like that piece, that's like on choir. It's like an orchestra, everybody in harmony. Yeah. So.
That's a great way to think about it. And I even love that there were five. I feel like, that whole idea of the big five in Hawaii, and we could
Mhm.
replace the big five power brokers with like the big five Hawaiian artists. I think that's a really
Yeah.
cool idea. That's really interesting that that has stood out for you as kind of like the pinnacle. Is there something about that experience that shaped like your aesthetic or not necessarily, or even your
Um.
process of doing large murals?
Yeah. No. Definitely. Like I said, that's what I always strive for. But just the process, like just having artists work together, it's not the easiest thing. So even seeing like how they were able to navigate that and knowing that actually you can create something greater when you are able to do that. Multiple minds at work
Yeah.
together.
Is there, well, and actually, do you work alone now? I figure you might have a small crew. So, do you work alone or do you collaborate on the murals that
Both,
you?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning was a lot of collaboration, and then it was good for me also to at times I had to step off and do my own thing too, and just to learn how to do that, and then. But I think the collaborative works are always
The most
yeah the
powerful.
greatest. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was like, reviewing your murals, and just one of the ones that caught my eye was the Kaulana Navai Eha.
Hmm.
And it was actually in the description of that mural in terms of like your perspective of taking like a bird's eye view
Hmm.
to see down from above to get that the widest view of the landscape. And so as I was looking at your other murals, I was thinking, is there how do you choose the perspective for your murals? Especially like, do you think about the person looking at them? Is it just more your vision of the artwork and the aesthetic yourself? How do you think about the perspective of the mural that you're going to take?
I guess the bird's eye view thing has been a kind of reoccurring theme that I've done in a multiple pieces. I guess that philosophy has always resonated with me, just to look at things from that perspective. And when you look at like the pattern work of our kupuna, I believe a lot of it, the patterns are looked at that way. Like footsteps in the sand, or it's kind of
Mm.
taken from that view, and kind of understanding the way they saw our world was and depicted it is different than the way we understand Western art and how we depict things in that way. So it's kind of encouraging myself to go in that direction. Yeah.
I mean, could you say a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of the inspiration for today is thinking about either what our kupuna and our ancestor thought or the actions that they took. Like for you, what's the difference in either like the aesthetic or I guess the choice of how they made patterns or how they made art? Or do you think that they even thought about it as art?
No, yeah, I don't think it was like art as in a separate thing. Like, growing up for us, like art is something you put on a wall, but in the days of old, the bowl they're eating their poi out of, the umeke pavehe, was, intricately covered in patterns. The
Mm.
water they would drink in a, ipu pavehe, like every aspect of life. And it kind of those it shows how valuable those parts of life were to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think art is part of everyday life. I think that's a great connection to the murals. I mean, murals are obviously too large to be in your house, but is there something about murals or choosing murals, like public art, the ability to give the whole community, but also Native Hawaiians, like the ability to have art
Mhm.
in their life or like beauty, visuals?
Yeah, I think, yeah, public art. I guess as a kid, I was always moved by just being in the car with my family, and seeing something that inspired me, and yeah, just the ability to speak to the masses. I think everybody communicates in different ways. I'm not really a talker. I think I communicate better through my visual works. But yeah, I always thought that was powerful. I've had experiences, where you'll meet people like 5 years later, and they'll tell you they saw something you created and
Hmm.
how it moved them, and that's what keeps me going now.
Yeah, well, hopefully you're not too, since you're on the hot seat today talking.
No,
So,
you know what I mean.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, just kind of going back to the patterns, because one of the pieces that everybody can see, it's almost, I guess, like a moving mural, are the new patterns on the buses.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you look at those patterns, though, because you even said earlier, like footprints. I
Hmm.
think sometimes when people think of Hawaiian patterns or Pacific patterns, it's like triangles or straight lines, very angular. Yours have a lot of movement. So, what is your process to think of, like, what is a Hawaiian pattern to you, and how did you morph that into what, like, we see on the buses today?
Yeah. I mean, I'm constantly trying to dig deeper, and yeah, when I kind of first started, delving into for me, the patterns are, the visual language of our kupuna. And yeah, when I started, it was like that. I'm using a ruler. I'm trying to measure everything like a
Mm-hmm.
grid. But the beauty of it, there's plenty old kappas in like the British Museum collection, and there's we're lucky now. A lot of these images are available, but when you look at it from a distance, there's like an obvious pattern. But when you zoom in, it's kind of breaking these rules, and they were painting. To me,
Mm.
that's how I see it. But um, pattern is the universal truth. So I think it's something that can speak to beyond cultures, could speak to every person, and you'll see it through all cultures. But like how you're talking about the movement, like for me recently, I've been looking at like the clouds. Um, shoot, I can't recall the name at the moment, but there's a type of cloud where it's almost like a net pattern work.
Mm.
So within that, you see it's based off a crosshatched net, but it's moving. And in the ocean, in the patterns of the water, you'll see the same thing where it's following like this pattern, like this Lahala mat, but it's alive, it's moving. So I was trying to channel that a little bit. Yeah, with
Yeah,
this
I mean, I think
aspect.
that's definitely what you see. To me, what I see in the patterns, your current patterns, is movement,
Mhm.
like very much so. And it's interesting that it's on the bus, right, too, and it's almost like
Yeah.
this meta idea of movement. Um, but where you were saying some of the things that you're looking at and that inspire you,
Mhm.
clouds, archives, what other kind of resources do you look at? And are they only like Hawaiian resources, or do you look kind of far and wide and then you bring that back in to what you're doing?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Sometimes I'm going down the rabbit hole of anything. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Yeah, I love information. I grew up in hanging out in libraries and just looking at books. But yeah, the beautiful thing now, there's so much more, like as each day comes, there's more information, being digitized.
Mm,
So I'm constantly like looking at museum collections, and there's constantly new things being uploaded. And yeah, we don't realize that, like we're blessed to have everything we have in Bishop Museum, but there's so many Hawaiian pieces of art that are around the world, yeah, in
mm.
Europe and throughout the states. And a lot of people, unless you go there, you'll never see it. And so yeah.
So you draw upon those sources as
Yeah.
well. Um, well, when I'm thinking of pieces that are in museums, obviously it's not really murals. It's something that's maybe more intimate or that you
Mhm.
can hold. And recently, you've actually gone from really big to really small in carving. And so some of the pieces I've seen on your website are really beautiful. So what's the transition that you've made from large to small, and like why carving? Was carving a part of your process earlier? It's maybe not just like publicly what you were known for. How did you get into carving?
Yeah, I think I was always inspired by carving. I mean, there's so much different aspects of our, mea kupuna that are fascinating. But I think as a young person, like, it was actually in Carl Paul's classroom. He had the Hawaiian sculpture book, and that thing just blew my mind as a
Mm,
16-year-old. Like, I think as a young artist, you're looking for like the most powerful visual, and to me those ki'i really spoke to me in that way. And now, I think my palette is matured and I can appreciate, the beautiful subtle forms of a bowl. But as a young person, I was always drawn to those ki'i, the power of them,
mm.
so I was always interested in it. And I kind of dabbled. But yeah, recently I've been doing a lot of the small scale stuff. And yeah, maybe it's a balance to the decade of murals. Yeah, it's like peaceful to just work in my palm. Yeah.
Yeah, touring your palm. Well, I mean, just thinking about both murals and the smaller pieces, your inspiration from, global history, but Hawaiian history. And actually in our pre-call, we were talking about your inspiration in early days. And since today is Laku'oko'a, um, your work maybe for the public may not seem inherently, political.
Mhm.
But you were talking about some of your other mentors or projects that you were working on in terms of like making statements. So, I mean, do you feel that there's a political statement in your work, or how does politics kind of just exist in your world, and how does that feed into either the motifs that you pick or the topics that you pick in your work? And maybe, and I guess, and how has it changed since when you were younger?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely changed maybe as I've matured in ways. But yeah, I definitely think the work is always political. I think about one of my mentors, Uncle Imai, or Uncle Snake, and that was something he always said. The work is always inspired by our political situation. And I think as a young person, there's a lot of like frustration and anger, and it might have came out that way. While now, I try to go maybe more for like the the Kaulana Napua kind of poetic way where,
Mm,
you know, there's other ways to say things. Yeah.
that's interesting. I like the poetry of it.
Yeah.
In some of my pre-calls with the speakers today, poetry, I think, comes through in a variety of ways, but also there's this idea of a portal. And so I'm wondering if that word speaks to you, if you see your work potentially as a portal for people. And then I'm also wondering, has it been a portal for you? Has your work like changed you as a Hawaiian?
Definitely. Yeah. Um, well, I guess in the way it changed me, I think about something Carl Paul said, but he talks about how, like art was the way for him to dive into his culture.
Mm,
And I feel the same way for me. I had that experience of, both my parents are Hawaiian, but I grew up, with the more of the urban Hawaiian experience, and I had to, discover what it meant to be Hawaiian growing up. But yeah, for me, art was,
mm.
that way in. And yeah, that's why I love public art, because yeah, you never know who it's going to speak to. And so definitely could be a portal in that sense of, yeah, you don't know what it's going to awaken in somebody.
In somebody, yeah. Um, since it is so public, is there either responsibility that you feel in how you portray, certain ideas? Do you think about that? Um, or maybe, is it more driven by like the entity or the organization that commissioned it? How much say do you have in your final like design? And does this idea of kuleana or responsibility of how you portray something
Mhm.
play a role in the final image that we see?
Yeah, definitely. It's been like a journey of, in the beginning, like not just wanting to do what I want to do, and then,
Mm,
having to learn how to do commissions, and now it's at a great place now. I think, I've done enough work where they trust me to just do what I'm gonna do, but it took a long time to get there. But yeah, it's definitely that was a realization along the way that it is a huge kuleana to create public work, because in a sense, I'm speaking for our people, and have learned lessons like on the job of, people sharing their critiques, and you know you might not get the greatest critique all the time, but I appreciate it now.
mm.
Actually, I have some like classic stories of like uncles coming up and me learning something in that critique. Yeah.
I just want to pull on that a little bit then. I mean, um, is there a particular mural project? And I don't even mean necessarily because like something bad or, intense happened, but that really transformed your view in that moment and affected how you implemented your mural process the next time. I mean, I'm sure you're learning every time.
Yeah.
As an artist myself, there's little tweaks and notes that I make on my process, but there one or even a few murals that just stand out in your mind in a surprising way that transformed kind of who you were as an artist?
I think, yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one. All of them are like, I don't
Mm.
know if you can relate, but
Your
you're
babies?
yeah, like you go to the mural and like halfway, like on Wednesday, you're like, I'm gonna quit art. I'm just can't. So everyone is like this big experience, of
Hmm.
fearing failure halfway through, and then when you complete it, you're like ready to cry. You're like, pull this off. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's hard to pinpoint one, but
Or maybe like as you reflected back, maybe it's like not or do you have a favorite actually?
um, I did this one in Halava public housing a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And that one was just really cool because there's a lot of Pacific families living there, and a lady. So it was on an apartment building, but a woman came out. She started talking to me in Olelo, and that was the first time. So I was like, oh wow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, in the public, sometimes the work is in the business district or something, but that one now was special to me because it's all little kids playing around as I was painting, and
Yeah. Um, I just want to go back a little bit where you were saying, sometimes in the mural process, like you're right, you want to cry, you want to quit. You're kind of like, how did I get myself into this? What for you is a part of that process that pushes you through? I'm just thinking, again, Laku Okoa today, thinking about our ancestors who experienced a lot of hardships. Obviously, they're different. but I do think it was like a process that they had to go to keep pushing forward. What's something that you use to keep yourself, in the game and actually finish the mural when you're in that kind of harder place?
I guess it's all the people who've supported me just to take on this role. Yeah, you don't want to let them down. Yeah. But yeah, for me, the murals, it's like I like to think of the mo'olelos of old, and it's like pulling off of feet, like Maui capturing the sun. That's what I'm channeling when I pull off a big project. Yeah, or
Yeah.
try to. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges? Yes, I'm an artist, but I know like to go to scale, right? To actually project something on a massive wall. What are do you feel like the differences or considerations when you're going big like that? And actually, is the wall itself either the shape or something like really actually limit you or create parameters off of what you can or can't do in a mural?
Yeah, definitely is a learning process. As a young person, you got the vision and you're like, I can do this, and then you learn there's a lot of like draftsmanship and planning. I was always just a freestyler, and I learned I couldn't do that at that scale. Yeah, and a lot of moving parts. Just we got to use lifts and yeah, gridding it out or the different methods to put the image up. But
Hmm.
there was a lot of those kind of skills that I had to develop a discipline. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel, yeah. I think there's this idea that you have this creative muse and there's a whimsy and you kind of go with it.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But I mean, wouldn't you agree? I think that that's a part of it. I mean, you
Yes,
want to
part of
keep
it.
the spirit
Yeah.
of kind of something that that's serendipitous or you can go with the flow, but there is that discipline. So like, how has even the technology changed probably from the first time that you did murals to now? Is it something that you can actually pull off more easily, like by yourself or with a small team, or not necessarily? Is it kind of the same process that you've had in the very beginning?
I mean, ultimately, yeah, like back into the, Michelangelo, them is just creating a grid. There's certain techniques, I guess, that you're always essentially some form of doing that. But
Hmm.
yeah, technology is moving fast. People are using like VR now to paint murals. But
Are
yeah,
you have you gone in that direction, or like how is there something maybe you're holding on to from your roots of doing murals that like just work for you, and it's more about, I guess, your process than like keeping up with technology?
yeah, I had to learn like or even using things like using projectors. Sometimes people in the beginning, we're critical on that, but yeah, when you're renting a lift, you gotta pull that thing off in a certain amount of time. So just learning how to work efficiently, yeah.
Mm.
And especially when you're like high up too, you don't want to be spending weeks endangering yourself. Yeah,
No, we're glad you're still here. We definitely
me
don't want
too.
you to endanger yourself. Getting back to the imagery though, because I think there's a lot of murals in Kaka'ako. I think people are used to murals, especially downtown. But there's something about your aesthetic and your visual, I guess to me, that's different. It feels layered to me. Um, and so like, what is your process of creating that final vision? There's just something that's really powerful to me about the way you create both almost like areas that are painted with actual like imagery versus patterns. So they feel very stacked and they have depth. They have a lot of depth to me. Um, just yeah, what is your process in terms of the elements that you choose to create your visual stories? How do you think about that?
Well, in terms of the depth, I'll go back to the mural in the convention center, but that was kind of part of the magic of that experience was watching the piece reveal itself. But it was literally layer upon layer. So I think the first layer, all the kids, made their marks, and then from there, it's a week full of layers. So, but yeah, it gives the painting a different feeling. Yeah, when you build it that way. So that's something I've always strived for. But in terms of imagery, I guess I'm very experimental. I think that's what I enjoy the most is I'm always experimenting. But As much as I enjoy, representational art, I guess somewhere along the way, I kind of set it on the side, and I tried to focus on, the way our kupuna viewed their world and told their stories. So, in the beginning, it might have been, more representation and a hint of, our the pattern work of our kupuna, and then now it's more so that the pattern work is the main
Mm.
element with a hint of, some representational elements.
I like that idea of layers. I mean, to me, it feeds into a genealogy as well. And so, like, where do you see yourself in this genealogy of Hawaiian artists, and what do you maybe wish for the next generation of emerging artists? Maybe what kind of kuleana do you feel in that, and what do you wish for them?
I guess I see myself as a grandchild of, the Hawaiian art renaissance. My mentor, Uncle Imai Kalani Kalahele, he would, be
Mm,
in that grandfather generation, as well as, Keone Nunez, my another kumu of mine, and then think of people like Pao, that's like the Mokua generation,
mhm.
and so Uncle Imai, he always talks about, he reminds me how lucky I am for all the opportunities I had, to pursue this, and it's because of them, all the work they did.
Yeah, I mean, you've brought up some amazing names. As we're talking, I'm also trying to focus in on what you're saying, but I have my own memories. I feel like they're just such characters, and it's been great that they're mentoring. Are there any the emergent like what do you see for like I said the next generation artist? What do you hope for them?
I'm very hopeful. It seems like, I guess 15 years already when I, kind of pursued this path. I think there was still some hesitation, within my own family, just career wise. But I think now it seems like, for the youth, like, nah, this is something,
Hmm.
not only you can do, but, we need it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I just have a few more questions here. Because your art is public and it's on it large scale, is there something that you kind of wish for maybe the built environment? You like you were saying, you live on Molokai, so much more rural, but we find these murals in very urban
Hmm.
spaces. Is there any connection between like Hawaiian imagery and urban spaces? Is there like a feeling that you have about being able to bring culture in a way to a space that has kind of been built over aina or maybe
Yeah.
built over what we can see and feel as being Hawaiian?
Yeah, I think the mural work, it's almost a response to our, place becoming urbanized.
Mm.
Maybe we wouldn't need murals if it was the days of old. We could just enjoy what was. But
Enjoy
here
the
we
natural
are.
view.
Yeah, yeah. Uncle E, he always talks about, when he within his lifetime, yeah, he watched where you can no longer see the mountain and the ocean now.
Mm.
But so yeah, in that way, yeah, the murals are, I think, our response to this urban environment. And it's been interesting, like traveling the Pacific, Aotearoa and Tahiti, and seeing the same thing. How, um, I have a lot of friends who are inspired by the graffiti movement, and
Mm.
how that turned into muralism for them. Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, that's an interesting connection. Yeah, I appreciate kind of knowing that now. So like what do you see as what's in your near term future? Like, are you going to continue small, or is there something else that you kind of envision yourself doing in the next 5 or so years?
I enjoy like monuments. Yeah, that's like
Mm,
my big goal. So I think the murals have been a accessible way to create monuments, a couple gallons of paint. But I would love to, create some things that will last for hundreds of years. And I think 10 years ago I wouldn't imagine that that was possible, but
mm.
now I can see it.
That's great. I
Yeah.
feel like you from big to small, but you're small as a sculpture, and it's almost like you're going to go back from small back to big. That's a very, very cool progression. My closing question here, as we reflect on art and practice as ku'oko'a, if you could become like the inner voice of all Kanaka, and, you know, push them to have like a daily practice, or like you were saying, a discipline, you know, what would you hope for, or what would you, almost that inner voice suggest that Kanaka could do kind of on a daily basis, just to kind of reconnect?
Just staying inspired, staying in awe of, you know, we're just lucky to to live here and be Hawaiian, and you know, a lot of times we focus on all the things we lost, but really we have so much, and there's so much more to dive into. You know, so much more ike left to be, you know, rediscovered, and just to be fascinated with, you know, our experience and being here. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's really appropriate place. We're in a bookstore with all kinds of ike, but to like look forward and to remember what we have. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for
Of
your
course, yeah.
conversation
Mahalo
today.
for having me.
Mahalo.